Let's talk about abandonment issues. A delicate modern woe, or so we think. But let's rewind almost 2000 years to Roman Egypt, where a young boy named Theon wrote what can only be described as the ultimate passive-aggressive letter to his father. Without documentary sources like papyri, this slice of ancient drama would be lost to history, buried in the sands of Oxyrhynchus along with shopping lists and tax receipts. Instead, we get a front row seat to one boy's emotional masterpiece. Theon's angst is palpable. He threatens not to write, not to speak, not even to say goodbye if his father dares leave him behind once again. He even ups the ante with a dramatic "I won't eat, I won't drink," the ancient equivalent of "I'll hold my breath until you notice me." Modern therapists might call this a cry for attention. Theon just called it an ordinary Tuesday. But humor aside, Theon's heartfelt scribblings remind us that abandonment issues, that rage, that fear, that emotions in general aren't new. They transcend centuries, cultures, and climates. Whether it's a Roman-era boy in Egypt or a modern text message left unread, the pain of feeling left behind is timeless. Oxyrhynchus, located in the middle of Egypt, wasn't exactly the Las Vegas of antiquity. It was more like the recycling bin of the ancient world. Once a thriving city, it became famous for its garbage dumps stuffed with priceless papyri. Oxyrhynchus, where ancient Egypt meets a hoarder's paradise. This bustling city, parked near the Nile, turned its trash into our treasure, love notes, shopping lists, and plays nobody staged. Think of it as the world's first literary landfill, where yesterday's gossip became today's papyrological goldmine. Who knew ancient shopping lists and drama scripts would be the real jackpot? Picture the scene. The late 19th century, an era when British gentlemen, often armed with more enthusiasm than practicality and bolstered by imperial privilege, descended upon foreign lands to dig up ancient civilizations as if uncovering relics of their own ancestral backyards. Amid this golden age of archaeological adventurism were Bernard Pine Grenfell and Arthur Savage Hunt, two Oxford-educated scholars who, in 1896, began the celebrated excavation of Oxyrhynchus, a sleepy provincial town in Roman Egypt whose legacy lay not in monumental ruins but in discarded paperwork. Grenfell and Hunt, trained classicists with a knack for deciphering ancient Greek texts, were soon sponsored by the Egypt Exploration Fund that was founded a year after their first Oxyrhynchus campaign. Their mission was to dig up forgotten Greek literary treasures, preferably from famed authors like Sophocles or Aristophanes. But instead of pristine scrolls destined to adorn museums and library shelves home in Britain, they uncovered papyrus dumps. Lots of them. The ancient town's revenues turned out to be a bureaucratic and literary jackpot. Private letters, tax records, shopping lists, religious texts, and even a few gems of classical literature, all wonderfully preserved in the arid Egyptian sands. The partnership between Grenfell and Hunt was almost comically archetypal of the colonial scholarly endeavor. Grenfell, on the one hand, the elder, was energetic, charismatic, and fond of public lectures, the academic equivalent of a Victorian influencer. He was, however, also prone to breakdowns. Eventually, he should retire early due to illness, eventually being replaced by his friend Hunt as a professor of papyrology at Oxford. Hunt, on the other hand, quieter and more meticulous, played the role of the stoic workhorse, his prodigious linguistic skills turning fragments of papyrus into coherent translations. Together they exuded the air of gentlemen scholars, comfortable both in Oxford seminar rooms and under the scorching Egyptian sun. That is, so long as there were servants, local laborers, and plenty of tea to hand. And here lies the rub. This was colonial archaeology at its most unabashed. Grenfell and Hunt's expeditions were funded and carried out with the implicit assumption that the treasures of the world were Britain's for the taking. Egyptian laborers, often paid a pittance, did the back-breaking work of sifting through the sand while Grenfell and Hunt curated their findings like proprietors of antiquity. Papyrus fragments were whisked away to London with little regard for their cultural origins, reinforcing a system that treated Egypt as a repository for Europe's intellectual enrichment. Grenfell and Hunt were undeniably brilliant, if perhaps a bit blind to the colonial underpinnings of their enterprise. Their Oxyrhynchus findings revolutionized our understanding of Greco-Roman Egypt. Grenfell's enthusiasm and Hunt's diligence ensured that these papyri weren't just curiosities, but academic cornerstones. The gentlemanly arrogance of their endeavor, however, is impossible to ignore. The legacy of Oxyrhynchus, those mounds of discarded documents, raises as many questions about the exploitative practices of colonial archaeology as it does about the lives of the ancient people whose garbage they so gleefully exhumed. But perhaps there is poetic justice in the fact that it wasn't grand temples or golden tombs Grenfell and Hunt immortalized, but the humble debris of everyday life. For all their pomp and imperial hubris, they ended up turning history's trash into treasure, a fitting metaphor for the peculiar blend of brilliance and privilege that defined their lives. Our brief story here started with a perfect plan: distract Theon. His parents knew he'd figured it out. Father was heading off on a business trip to Alexandria, the big city, leaving Theon behind. Maybe his parents thought that a kind word or two, perhaps a little present, would smooth things over. But Theon wasn't buying it. When the dust settled and father had sailed away, Theon's sense of betrayal erupted. In a papyrus letter dripping with indignation, he let loose. Mother was upset that Theon was upset. So much we learned from the letter. Perhaps he had locked himself up and penned his bill of indictment. Here we see a photograph of the letter. Little Theon's frustration spills onto the papyrus, each towering unsealed letter a monumental cry, "How could you?" His words loom large, as if the sheer size might tug at the heartstrings of his fatherly reader, or at least guilt father into bringing a present when he returns. Theon to his father Theon greeting. It was a fine thing of you not to take me with you to the city. If you won't take me with you to Alexandria, I won't write you a letter or speak to you or say goodbye to you, and if you go to Alexandria, I won't take your hand nor ever greet you again. In the edition in the first volume of the Oxyrhynchus Papyri by Grenfell and Hunt, they noted, "The letter's grammar and spelling leaves a good deal to be desired." In the first sentences, Theon constantly mixed up the dative and the accusative case, which is difficult to render in English. "I won't write yours a letter or speak to yours again" might perhaps better reflect Theon's upset fight with the grammatical cases. He continues, "That is what will happen if you won't take me. Mother said to Archelaus it quite upsets him to be left behind. It was good of you to send me presents on the 12th, the day you sailed. Send me a lyre, I beg you. If you don't, I won't eat, I won't drink. There now, farewell." And on the back side we find the address of the letter. It was to be delivered to Theon by his son Little Theon, using a diminutive form here. Theon's letter was, with so many others, plucked from the dusty depths of Oxyrhynchus's garbage bins, so it might pose a little mystery. Did Mother, in her infinite wisdom, promise to send the letter only to casually bin it instead? Or perhaps it did reach its destination only for Father to haul it back home, complete with the desired lyre, of course. Was Theon's plea a round-trip passenger on a Papyrus Express, or was Oxyrhynchus where neglected letters go to die? Either way, one hopes Theon's dreams weren't entirely dashed. Theon's letter captures a moment that feels timeless, the sting of being left behind. His towering script mirrors his towering emotions, resentment, longing, and a touch of theatrical flair. It's not just a letter but a performance, a vivid snapshot of a young boy desperate to be heard. He threatens silence, starvation, and even a refusal to say goodbye, wielding his words like weapons in a battle for attention. Yet, nestled among the indignation is his plea for a lyre, a small poignant hope that music might mend the distance. Little Theon's frustrations remind us that even in antiquity, the heart often spoke louder than reason.